Welcome back to The Explainer. So, if you're a focused learner who's ever wanted to truly forge your own path in a digital sandbox, you are in the exact right place. Today, we're diving deep into the wildly open-ended progression system of the Immortal Realm. We're going to break down the whole shebang, from your very first skill points all the way to those brutal endgame ceilings. It's a fascinating chronological journey of character building, so let's just jump right into the source material.
Okay, let's dive into this. Think of today's outline as your personal blueprint for not just surviving, but actually thriving in a world that completely ditches standard MMO classes. We'll start off by building your 700-point hero. Then look at the fast track to early competence. Brave the 70 to 100 grind. Break some caps with Powerscrolls. Examine proven builds. And finally, map out your long arc timeline.
All right, Section 1, Building Your 700-Point Hero.
In the Immortal Realm, you've got to completely toss out the concept of rigid classes. Seriously, just throw it out the window. You have absolute freedom here, but it's governed by one absolutely crucial rule: a 700-point skill cap budget. And this brilliantly illustrates the concept. Think of it like a strict financial budget, or, a pizza cut into exactly 7 equal slices. If you take 7 distinct skills and push every single one of them to a maximum of 100 points, you get this perfectly balanced character. Take a standard warrior-mage hybrid, for instance. By maxing out swordsmanship, tactics, anatomy, healing, parrying, magery, and resisting spells, you're building a complete hero that beautifully balances heavy physical damage with essential magical utility. But your skills are really only half the equation. You've also got your core stats: strength, dexterity, and intelligence, and these share a rock-solid 225-point hard cap. Now, while individual stats actually have a base cap of 125, which you can technically bump up to 150 using special scrolls from the dangerous Felucca zone, that 225 total limit, that forces you to make some defining sacrifices. The standard fighter build might heavily weight strength and dexterity at 100 each for pure power and attack speed, but that leaves a measly 25 points for intelligence. The reality is, you simply can't be a genius bodybuilder ninja. Every single point you spend is a massive trade-off.
Moving on to Section 2, the fast track to competence.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how the early game is specifically tuned to respect your time. From level 1 to 70, you're actually getting skills roughly 30% faster than standard game mechanics. The whole purpose here is fast competence. They want you functional in your very first week without some mindless grind. But as you can see, those training wheels come off pretty dramatically right after you hit level 70.
So before you tackle that harder mid-game phase, your initial goal is to build a highly functional base. Specifically, you want what we call the 70-70-70-70 working template. For a standard fighter, that translates to 70 in a primary combat skill, 70 in tactics, so you can actually land a hit, 70 in anatomy for vital extra damage, and 70 in healing just to stay alive. Hitting these 4 milestones usually takes about a week of regular play, and it forms your absolute survival base. Once you've got this rock-solid foundation, then you can confidently start branching out into more specialized paths.
Section 3. The real work, the 70 to 100 grind.
This right here is the productive zone. This is where true dedication kicks in. The source guide perfectly summarizes this entire philosophy. There are no XP bars. You raise a skill by spending time using it. So the crucial point is, you don't arbitrarily grind out player levels, and you're definitely not fetching 10 bear pelts for some random quest giver. You gain combat skills by actually hitting monsters. You gain magery by casting spells under real pressure. You gain crafting skills by sweating at an anvil. It is a wonderfully immersive, purely experiential system.
To survive this zone efficiently, you've got to stick to 3 golden rules. Step 1, stay with a Gainsland. Basically, find that sweet spot where a monster's difficulty perfectly aligns with your current skill level. Step 2, don't grind alone unless you absolutely have to. Teaming up lets you take on much harder content, which directly triggers significantly faster skill gains. And Step 3, use the right reagents and tools. Cheap shortcuts literally just waste your time. Realistically, expect your very first primary skill to take 2 to 4 weeks of solid work to reach 100. But hey, the great news, once you've got that anchor skill, subsequent ones level up way faster, simply because your character can survive much tougher content right out of the gate.
All right, Section 4, breaking caps with Powerscrolls.
So what exactly happens when you finally master a skill? Well, you hit the true endgame threshold. If you want to push past that standard 100-point ceiling, you're going to need a Power Scroll. These are tradable items that drop from incredibly tough champion spawns, which are located deep in the PvP-centric Felucca zone. These scrolls raise a skill's individual cap up to a hard limit of 120, moving in 5-point increments. For absolute combat dominance, these things are effectively mandatory. But because they spawn in such a cutthroat, dangerous zone, getting your hands on one means taking on massive physical risk, heavily relying on strong guild support, or shelling out an absolute fortune to trade with other players. 120. That number represents the absolute zenith of power for any single skill in the game. But wait, remember that 700-point total budget we talked about at the very beginning of this explainer? That hard cap never ever changes. So pushing a skill up to 110 or 120 profoundly alters your character's budget. Instead of 7 neat skills sitting perfectly at 100, a player maxing out their power scrolls might end up with roughly 6 skills at 110, leaving just 40 measly points for a final utility skill. Literally every single point you go over 100 requires sacrificing a point somewhere else. It is an absolutely brilliant system of balance.
Let's move to Section 5, Proven Immortal Realm Builds.
Let's see how these sandbox rules actually apply to successful templates players use out in the wild. You can see 2 entirely distinct philosophies right here. On one hand, you have the pure warrior, super tanky, highly self-sufficient, and capable of soloing most PvE content relying on heavy weapons and rapid healing. On the other hand, the pure mage completely abandons heavy weapons for deep magical skills like evaluating intelligence and inscription. They rely on massive burst damage and area control, but man, they are incredibly fragile in close quarters combat. Now, neither of these is objectively better than the other. Both are perfectly viable 700-point paths depending entirely on how you want to interact with the world.
And, it's not just about hand-to-hand or magical combat either. Tamers utterly dominate solo PvE by using highly trained beasts to basically tank and fight for them. Meanwhile, crafters literally drive the entire server economy. They're the ones mining the ore, smithing pristine armor, and gathering the resources that every single warrior and mage relies on. In the Immortal Realm, a dedicated crafter or tamer is just as vital and, honestly, just as respected as a frontline combatant. Every path you choose is a genuinely valid sandbox choice that rounds out this huge, diverse ecosystem.
Finally, Section 6, the Long Arc Timeline.
Let's pull back for a second and map out the exact chronological journey you can expect as a new player. In Week 1, you're taking full advantage of those much faster early gains to build up your base 70s in the safer, protected Trammel zones. Moving into Weeks 2 through 4, you're putting in the dedicated work, pushing your primary skills toward 100 and testing the waters in mid-tier dungeons. By months 2 and 3, you're polishing off your all-100 template and finally stepping confidently into the highly dangerous Felucca zone. And looking at month 4 and beyond, you are fully hunting for those rare 110 and 115 power scrolls, cementing your character for those high-end, brutal encounters. It's a beautifully seamless transition from a fast, early track to a deeply rewarding endgame.
Which brings us to our final thought. The source text makes one incredibly poignant observation. There is no point at which you simply win this sandbox. The Long Arc reward isn't some final boss or an end credit screen. No, the reward is the world itself, and the totally unique role your character carves out over months and even years. So the ultimate question remains, there is no winning the Immortal Realm, so how will you live in it? The path is entirely up to you. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and I really hope this sparked your curiosity to jump in and start a journey of your very own.